news. Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
John, excuse me. I had to take a drink of my muscle milk there. A little bit late for the show getting into. You don't mind that, do you? I need my muscles. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, of course, Brad. And you've swapped out your Mountain Dew for muscle milk now?
No, I have them both, you know. Matter of fact, here's sitting on the console this morning. I have my Little Debbie's. I have my Mountain Dew, and I have my muscle milk. So life is good. That is the voice of John Combest, Combest. I spell his name because of the fact you need to type that into your computer. Because why? You need to check out his website, johncombest.com. Every single day for the past 23 years, John puts together this incredible list of all these important stories you should know about. Now, the only problem is sometimes you could spend half hour, 2 hours going through all the different links that John has there. But what we do is we bring it down to the top three. We bring in this gentleman right here. Your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we start with...
In third place...
Where my money at, Brad? Where my money at? That's the theme of a piece from St. Louis Public Radio, posted today by a content creator named Lucretia Wembley. Her headline: Where is the money? North St. Louis residents feel neglected months after the tornado. We've discussed in great detail here about the tremendous tornado that came through North St. Louis. And Brad, residents are still trying to clean up. They have piles of debris. They have piles of rubble yet to be cleaned up. And they ask, where is the money? The tornado was May 16th, and there's some of them are still waiting for money to come in. Now, what you'll be particularly interested in, Brad, you might recall that the city has designated $30 million from the interest of the St. Louis Rams settlement money to go toward cleanup here. But many residents say they haven't seen it yet. So what's the answer? The president of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen, Megan Green, says that they've been distributing money in lump sums to groups like the United Way. She says the United Way can move nimbly and then subcontract those grants out to other people. But Brad, the bottom line here is that a lot of money will be going to some brand new nonprofits, some nonprofits that have even been formed since the tornado. And they can be trusted with money to clean up. We know that, right? So I think the great thing about this story is, Brad, now that so much money will be going to urban contractors and quote unquote nonprofits, that over the next few years, we're going to see a beautiful and bountiful crop of stories coming from, say, Missouri state auditors about where this money was spent. And if these nonprofits and these other groups actually fulfilled their commitment to clean up here. Now, Brad, you've been an advocate, as long as we've been doing the show, for taking the Rams money and doing something productive with it. You've talked about hiring more police officers. You've talked about doing things to improve the general nature of the city. Don't you think it's a good thing that some of this Rams money is spent for cleanup, Brad?
Well, technically, it's not really Rams money. It's just interest on the Rams money, if you want to be
Okay, yeah,
technical.
fair point. Yeah, but,
okay.
You know, it's kind of in the same bucket, wouldn't you say?
John, question for you. Newly formed not-for-profits, like you're the man with all the answers. When you say newly formed, like within the last couple of weeks, is that by chance?
No, not within the last couple of weeks. And, Brad, I don't have the name of the most recent one in front of me. I'm looking through the St. Louis Public Radio piece, but I did see that one of the leading groups that are pitching themselves, I should say, for money was formed immediately after the tornado. And they're a consulting group that says, hey, we have expertise. I believe the gentleman had at some point been involved with St. Louis Development Corporation. In fact, I'm certain he had, because that stuck out at me for anybody who remembers us talking about St. Louis Development Corporation. And so some folks who have some experience with contracts said, hey, we're going to form a brand new group and we're going to help clean up North City. Now, Brad, just because they had ties to St. Louis Development Corporation doesn't mean that they're hucksters or that they're scammers. But yeah, it's fair to say that there's at least one prominent group that has popped up since the tornadoes hit here.
John, what's your read on this? Give us the real opinion.
Here's what I really think. I think that there will be, I think a majority of the groups that are going to be involved in this are going to get the cleanup contracts through United Way and are going to be reputable. And then I think there will be millions of dollars that are spent on no-show groups and community nonprofits that don't do anything and that are just there to collect a check because they have friends in government.
John, you and I are sometimes very much on the same wavelength. I have to tell you something. When you were with Monsanto, every year they had the big United Way fund crowd. Is United? What used to be United?
Yeah, it was miserable. Yeah, just absolutely terrible.
And essentially, it was sort of like they were shaming you into giving money to this organization.
Oh, you were required to. So for folks who've had the pleasure of never having to work in a corporate office, you have team captains. And for example, Brad, a good friend of mine at Bayer this year is a captain. And well, I won't go into details about how they feel about being voluntold to do it. But you have to go through, if you were to choose to deny to give money for the United Way Pledge Fund, you still have to log in, create an account, and then go through a bunch of hoops to say, no, I don't want to help my community. So in general, you give $100 and you say, here, get out of here. Brad, I sat at my desk and told my friends, here, just take this. I never want to see you again. We're having a reception Thursday in the cafe. I never want to see you again. Just take my money and go.
Okay, but you and I are in the same plane with that because of the fact that, yes, once upon a time when I worked in corporate radio, that happened as well, too. But the other aspect of this is, can't the city instead of, two-stepping this to a not-for-profit United Way, can't the city just call up the 1-800-GOT-JUNK guys and say...
Yeah, or college hunks and have them move it into a dumpster.
Right, or essentially say, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you $500 for each truckload, and there will be a guy who will be standing at the entrance to the dump. And when you bring your truck in, we will log your truck number and therefore credit you with $500 for that truckload of junk. Don't you think it could be done real simple like that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it would seem that you could hire private contractors to come and do it. And Brad, let's be fair for a moment here to Megan Green. This piece says that Megan Green went to this community meeting at the end of August. She said some contractors can't be trusted. Here's her quote. Some of these contractors we've seen have taken money from folks and then never showed up to do the work. And so, and then in brackets, Mission St. Louis has gone through the list and is in the process of standing up that home repair program to be able to get dollars out to residents or to pay for contractors. So even, Brad, even Megan Green is acknowledging that many contractors take money and don't even show up. They just get the check.
But John, isn't that the fault of the city? I mean, like for example, let's say you own a construction company and you get a contract in the city of St. Peter's to replace some sidewalks in one of the neighborhoods. There's, certain, 1,000 feet of sidewalks need to be replaced because they're pitted and cracked and stuff like that. Okay, before you get paid, the inspector that works for the city is going to come out and say, okay, they did a nice job. We're going to get them the check. Why doesn't the city do that? What do they give these people, contractors, money and say, hey, we hope you're going to go do your job, but we're paying you ahead of time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make sense. The order of that doesn't seem to make sense, Brad. And maybe you just think, maybe if you're a contractor, you think, yeah, I kind of doubt that the city's going to actually cut the check and make me money and pay me money. I don't know.
The whole thing is just, you hear these stories and I hear this and I'm thinking to myself, man, I just don't get this. This is, to me, it's like utter incompetence on the part of the city. And not only that, wasn't it to a point where they were trying to bring in the National Guard to clean stuff up? Was that one of the deals too?
Yeah, I think so. I think they were. And I should also note too that the state has committed to giving money for this, and I believe it was. I don't want to quote the number because I don't have it right in front of me, Brad. But the state committed to give a certain amount of money, and then, as I read it, the state has not yet delivered that money to the city. And yet, I'm sorry, $100 million. The state of Missouri approved $100 million. And if I recall correctly, Brad, that was in the first special session called by Governor Kehoe. That was part of the negotiation for the keeping the Chiefs and the Royals, the stadium deal. The Governor Kehoe tossed some money to St. Louis. And apparently the state of Missouri has not yet cut a check. And I'm guessing that's because there's no that's because St. Louis City has no real plan.
Man, I tell you what.
Hey, but you know what we haven't heard about a while? A story in a person in story number 2, Brad.
So that's my cue?
That is your cue, Brad.
Up a notch to number 2.
A name that we haven't heard in quite a bit, Brad, or at least I haven't heard it in quite a while. Pat Buchanan. Remember Pat Buchanan, Brad?
Oh, yeah. Ties to St. Louis.
Long ties to St. Louis. Former editorial writer of the St. Louis Globe-Democrat many years ago. And Pat Buchanan ran for president most famously in 1992. He ran before that, but also he ran in 1996. Senator Eric Schmitt on Saturday sent a letter to President Donald Trump suggesting that Trump give the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Pat Buchanan. Brad, I have a story up on my website today about this. I also have the letter from Schmitt in front of me. And in general, Schmitt points out that although Pat Buchanan never actually held elective office, he ran for president 3 times and every time was mocked and derided by the national liberal mainstream media for a lot of his populist views. So in short, Schmitt says, hey, Mr. President, let's not forget Pat Buchanan and the role he played. These are my words, not Schmitt's. Forget the role that Pat Buchanan played in standing up for American values, for some populist, good, down-home American values. Now, Brad, I'm going to play old guy for a minute, kind of like Brad Hildebrand, but I'm going to go anti-Brad and tell a Pat Buchanan story I've never told before. You ready?
Yes.
What many folks that have been involved in politics for the last, let's say, 15 years might not have read about and might not even know. Remember the name John Brunner, Brad?
I do.
John Brunner ran for U.S. Senate. He ran for governor. He had a very popular, I should say populist following here in the state of Missouri. And John Brunner's dad, John Brunner Sr., was the organizer in the state of Missouri of Pat Buchanan's presidential campaign back in 1996. They had a huge event out at Kirkwood High School, Brad. A young John Combest attended that event when I was still a student at Hazelwood East High School. And the Brunner family ran the whole event out there. And then when John Brunner ran for office, I was like, holy cow, is that the super old guy that was a Pat Buchanan guy? No, it was actually Brunner's kid that ran for Senate. So it's funny to think of John Brunner as once being a relatively young man, I guess. Anyway, Brad, Pat Buchanan, a man that I think that is often overlooked in the conservative / populist movement of 2025. But boy, he was a huge figure here in Missouri for a long time.
He was the White House Communications Director from February 6, 1985 to March 1st, 1987 under Ronald Reagan, which was sort of interesting.
Wow. Now, Brad, did you go to According to AI for that?
Born in Washington, D.C., and he's 86 right now. He was born on November 2nd, 1938.
I mean, part of Schmitt's logic is probably, I don't mean to be macabre here, Brad, but like Pat's getting up in age, and and how many more opportunities will we have to honor the man if we don't take advantage of it right now?
I agree with it. I agree with him. He's, as a matter of fact, he ran. It's interesting. He's got all sorts of interesting stuff in here. He used to be in the Republican Party from before 1999 and 2004 to present. From 1999 to 2002, he was in the Reform Party. From 2002 to 2004, he was in the Independent Party, and now he's back in the Republican Party. So he's moved around a little bit.
And one more anecdote before we move to story one, Brad. What a lot of folks might be interested in is 30 years ago, we had a presidential primary. So if you look at 1995 going into 1996, and we had a group of, you could call them establishment Republicans who backed Bob Dole for president. And then you had an assemblage of other Republicans who backed either Pat Buchanan or Phil Gramm for president. And Brad, those caucuses in 1996 and early 96 were marked by a huge fight in the state of Missouri. And there was one group of people who claimed to be real mainstream Republicans. And then there was a group of people that went around and said, hey, we want no RINOs in our party. Get rid of the RINOs. Boy, it's strange because you never hear that anymore, do you, Brad?
Only at Tracy's station.
Oh, Brad. You know what they're talking about on Tracy's station today, story number one?
Well, hold on. Let me just read this real quick. I thought this is interesting. After receiving his master's degree at age 23, Buchanan joined the St. Louis Globe Democrat. In 1961, during the first year of the U.S. embargo against Cuba following the Cuban Revolution, trade between Canada and Cuba tripled. The Globe Democrat published a rewrite of Buchanan's Columbia's Masters Project under the 8-column banner, Canada Sells Out to Red Cuba and Prospers, 8 weeks after Buchanan started at the paper. In his memoir, right from the beginning, he considered the column a career milestone, though he later said the embargo against Cuba strengthened the communist regime and opposed it. Interesting. So he's right out of college and making a difference. How many other 23-year-olds you hear nowadays?
Not many people could say that, Brad. You know who was making a big difference in college? Story of number one.
The number one.
Oh, yeah, it's true. Jason Rosenbaum had a following in his early 20s, Brad, but that's a completely different story. Or to quote Brad, that's a whole nother story. 2 great pieces from Jason Rosenbaum. Actually, 3 great pieces from Jason Rosenbaum on my website today. And Brad, with just 2 minutes left, I'll summarize what's not a surprise to anyone. Yesterday, the Missouri House voted to pass new redistricting maps and also an overhaul of the initiative petition system. Now, both bills, Brad, had Republicans, some Republicans, voting against them. And you can go to Jake Crozen's Whispering Gallery to see the names of the Republicans who voted against the party line on redistricting and IP changes. Brad, I wanted to highlight for you and our listeners that none of the folks that voted against these Republican bills were from the St. Charles County area or anywhere in our listening area, West St. Louis County, etc. So the folks that represent us or in our broadcast area voted with the Republican majority on redistricting and IP changes. And, gosh, I hate to bury the lead here, Brad, perhaps the most important thing and the best news for Democrats, they got a phone call, I believe yesterday morning, from Kamala Harris, telling them to stay in the fight, Brad. And to quote some songsters, I forgot who it is, you are not alone. Kamala Harris told them they are not alone, Brad. They're so brave for staying and fighting. Now, a call from Kamala is pretty awesome. I mean, I guess Walter Mondale technically wasn't available. Maybe John Kerry was out on a yacht somewhere and couldn't make a phone call. But to get a phone call from a presidential campaign runner-up is pretty cool, don't you think, Brad?
Are you really asking me as a serious
question?
question?
I mean, how awesome. What an honor for a woman that ran for president to spend, I'm guessing, 3 to 4 minutes on a perfunctory phone call. It was pretty cool. And by the way, I should give credit to Mark Maxwell had this up. He reposted a video. There's a black guy state rep who recorded it. And Kamala called. And the black guy, his name is Ray Reed. And he went into telling some story about how he and his wife just drove to California. I'm sure Kamala was really fascinated by that story. So I clicked it off at that point because, I mean, who cares? I don't know how you can make a conversation with a presidential candidate somehow about yourself. But good for Ray Reed. I mean, when else are you going to have the ear of Kamala Harris? So I think it's pretty cool that Kamala called them, Brad, and gave them a pep talk.
Okay, John. Whatever you say, I will.
You don't think that's cool, Brad? I think what an honor.
You know.
And it was sent to me because the video features a back shot, pardon the expression, of House Super Minority Leader Ashley Aune. And then there's a woman there who's like a dead ringer for. There was a woman named Gina Mitten, who was a state rep, and there's some white gal, some Democrat, kind of diminutive woman that looks just like former state rep Gina Mitten. Anyway, but a listener to our show, Brad, a wonderful, lovely female sent it to me because she knows that I would be interested in the shot. So yeah, pretty cool. Shout out to Mark Maxwell because that's a pretty good piece.
Okay, if you say so, John. I'm thinking to myself, as we look back in history, there will be a moment where people will realize, oh my God, that 2024 election was the ultimate train wreck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that, Brad, I think you should stop being unburdened by what has been.
I mean, train wreck in that, when you and I were doing the show, remember on a couple occasions, I said to you, John, we are in a period of history which will never be repeated. You know what I'm saying? Almost.
Yeah. As you said, Brad, you get like 18 years worth of history in like a 18-day period.
Well, if you look at like essentially from June to November of 2024, every day was like, okay, what earth-shattering thing's going to happen today? The debate, all the other crazy thing, the assassination attempt twice. Now, if you read about the crazy, weird trial with that guy that tried to shoot Trump at the golf course, God,
yeah, that was just on the Fox News update right before we went on the air, Brad.
God, is that bizarre? I mean, it's just bizarre. Okay, we need to take a break, and because you know what's coming up, John?
It's time for Brad's Top 3.